Mark, let's go ahead and get started. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'll start off with a little bit of history about me. I graduated from college, a small college in Iowa, and it was Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa. And so I started working at a life insurance company that was actually in Waverly. And I, in college, was a physics and math major. So I began working at a life insurance company as a computer programmer. And it was a team of computer programmers that were embedded in an actuarial team that was doing product development. And as I was on that team, I got involved in project management, product analysis, a little bit of product pricing, a lot of coding for different things. And after about 9 years of working there, then I began taking actuarial exams because I was at that time working for an actuary who we had a discussion about what I wanted to do with my life. And I told him what I was interested in. And he said, "Oh, well, those are the things that actuaries do. So you should become an actuary." So I don't suggest that this is the way people do it, but 9 years after graduating from college, I started taking exams. And that meant that I had to reteach myself calculus because that's a big part of some of the early exams. So then I ended up working at that company for 18 years before I took a job at a different company and moved to Des Moines, the Des Moines, Iowa metro area. And at that company, I was very involved in GAAP financials, so doing GAAP valuation for indexed annuities. That was really interesting, really loved doing that for 2 years. And then now I'm at EMC National Life. I was hired here just over 6 years ago. And EMC National Life is a small company. We don't have a lot of products. We have term, whole life, and universal life that we currently sell right now. And so we've got a small team, about 4 actuaries, and I'm the CFO and chief actuary at EMC National Life now. That's the role I currently hold. And I'm also the appointed actuary. That would be the main actuarial role that I'm doing right now. Is that a good enough bio?
Yes. Do you want to talk to us about holding 3 different titles at once? Because that seems pretty excessive, but pretty cool too.
Yeah, and I would say I can talk about that and talk about Smallco at the same time by saying that, yeah, I've worked at a couple of larger companies, and when you do that, you can have a very specific role where you do something and you become very much an expert in that particular part of actuarial science. And working at a small company, it is very much the opposite. You become a generalist and you wear a lot of different hats. The accounting team is small, the IT team is small. We have, I think, 81 employees right now. So we're a team where basically we know everybody by the first name. And so you can, across the entire company, know the person that you're dealing with. If you have a problem with something, in marketing or in sales or in the call center, you can go talk to somebody and know exactly who you're talking to. That's a really, in my opinion, great part of working at a small company. And some people, that's not what they want. So a larger company is really better for them and their career path and what they want to do and how they want to be an actuary. So yeah, at a small company, you get asked to do a number of different things. And so the last CFO of EMC National Life, I just took over 2 years ago. He was a CPA, so he was an accountant, and he was much more involved in the accounting side of the finance team, which involves both actuaries and accountants. And since I was promoted to this role, I'm much more involved on the actuarial side. So I retained the job of being the appointed actuary when I became the CFO. But I'm much less involved on the accounting side, and other people have had to take over the stuff that he used to do when he was the CFO. And that's small. So just to elaborate a little bit more on Smallco, as a section, we're really interested in the things that occur in small companies. So each small company doesn't have the resources to understand everything that's going on in the actuarial workspace. So new regulations come out, we can network together, talk about what's going on, because one person at a company might be an expert in a certain area and they can help us understand what's going on. And that goes for a lot of other different things that are going on in the actuarial space. When new things come up, we can use the Smallco section to help us network and understand what issues different small companies are dealing with. And a lot of times we find out, yeah, we're dealing with the same issues as each other, and we're dealing with the same issues as a lot of times larger companies are, but they have the resources to devote an entire person or an entire team to a task. And as small companies, we don't. So we lean on each other to help work through a lot of things. And that's what Smallco is really about.
That's cool that y'all have a community of, obviously, I was going to say like-minded, you're actuaries, of course you're like-minded, but more very specific type of work. So that's really cool that that section exists. Folks, again, welcome to everyone who has just come in. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A box. So Mark, you mentioned that working now at a smaller company, you are, sorry, I just saw someone raise their hand. If the person who raised their hand, I'm not sure who you were, but go ahead and put that question in the Q&A box if you have a question. You mentioned that you are a generalist more now that you're at a smaller company. So what was it like, specializing whichever FSA track that you went on? So you specialized and now you're having to be a generalist again. If you want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so I'm a life and annuity actuary by my exam path. So that's where I have my FSA in the life and annuity track. And specifically when I worked at my last employer was Athene, and they are big in the indexed annuity space. And so at that company, I came in and they had acquired some different companies along the way. That's how they became part of how they became as large as they had, is acquiring different companies. And one of the companies they acquired had a valuation system that the people there didn't have experience using, and I had experience using that. So it was interesting to immediately become the expert on a system. And so anybody who had a question about how things were working or what was going to be done, they came to me. And to a great extent, that's how everybody was working there. Everybody had a job, and after you had done it for 6 months or 12 months, you became an expert in it. So if you were interested in what they were doing or what was going on with their process, you could go talk to them and they would know, all of the details about that. So I was on a gap valuation for this product block, and there was somebody else who was the expert on a statutory valuation for this product block. And I think that's an interesting and an exciting place to be, where you can really spend that amount of time digging into the details of how your model works and how those products work. And I thought that was a really exciting time in my career to have that much time to devote to specific issues that were involved there. And so now, as a generalist, I think this is equally as exciting, but it's completely different in the sense that when I came to EMC National Life, I had to say, okay, well, now we don't do gap financials at all because we run our company completely on statutory financials. So we have to do stat and tax financials. And I have to be able to do them for all of the different product lines we have. So we have what I said, the term, the whole life, and the UL product lines that we currently sell. We also have product lines that we used to sell that we no longer do, that are in closed blocks that are runoff. So I have to understand how to do valuation for those as well. And it means that I don't have as much time to dig in and understand, oh, here's exactly how the model works for every single one of these. I have to devote my time in a more balanced way to understand that everything is getting done appropriately, but I'm not an expert on any of it anymore.
Thank you for sharing that. So we have our first question, and what does a day in your life look like? I'm assuming they mean a day in the life of your job, not like in your action, like
Not
your
what I
whole
do.
life.
Right. Yeah, I'm an actuary, so my regular life is not that interesting. I'm a boring person, obviously. Yeah, I often joke with people that I became an actuary so I wouldn't have to talk to anybody. I could just sit and work on Excel all day. And now I'm talking to people all day long. So I would say I'll have 2 to 3 meetings before noon and a couple more in the afternoon. Like, that's a common day for me. And sometimes, it's an odd day if I have less than 2 meetings in a day. That's like a special day where I can really get a lot of work done. So I'm meeting with people, and depending on what time of year it is. So at the end of the year, when we're doing valuation for the December 31st valuation, we have to do the actuarial opinion, the actuarial memorandum. Those are days where I'm spending a lot of time talking to the actuarial team, because we're running the actuarial models, we're doing cash flow testing, we're doing AG38 testing, so that I can sign those opinions and work with somebody on the team to write that memorandum. And I'm really doing a lot of actuarial thinking in those times. I'm not doing really any of the modeling anymore. I have other people on the team that are doing the actuarial modeling. But we're communicating a lot about what we're seeing in the model, anything that needs to be fixed in there. And that fills up a lot of that time. And also then for year end, I'm also dealing a lot with people on the accounting side, because we have to finish up the blue book, make sure everything is reported on time, signed off there, submitted to the state. And when we're not in year end mode, that's really a lot of what the job becomes is, people are doing things, and the state requires that certain things be signed off on. Auditors require that certain things be signed off on. So I'm working with people to be brought up to speed on here's what's going on. And so you understand what's going on here, so that you can sign off on it and submit it to either the state of Iowa or some other state that has requirements for us. And then there's also the long-term planning for things. So people are doing product development. We're bringing on new distribution partners, agents, and they have ideas for new products. So I have people on a product team that are bringing ideas to me and saying, hey, this is what we'd like to build for a new product, and working with people on our leadership team to decide, which are good ideas and which are ideas that aren't going to be able to go anywhere. So there's a lot of interaction with people on other teams, and a lot of communication and decision making that goes into my day now, that it's really very much different than what I used to do when I was a very technical actuary.
So you could say that every day is different, except for at least 2 meetings, it seems like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Would you say it is challenging to enter a small company at the entry level? You mentioned that people wear a lot of hats, so I was wondering if someone with no prior experience would have a hard time meeting expectations.
I would say that it really depends on the kind of person you are more than anything else there, because I think certain people are going to thrive at a small company and certain people are going to thrive at a large company. A lot of people will thrive at both, but it becomes a situation where, yeah, if you're the kind of person who really wants to dig in and own something very specific, then yes, you're not going to be at home here because you're not going to have the time to do that at a small company. And if you're the kind of person who likes to, work on a bunch of different things and bounce around between different issues and problems and products and things that are going on, then you would be at home here. So we hire people who have no prior experience, like they may have just gotten out of college and have one internship or something like that and have taken no exams. And we hire people who have lots of experience. It just depends on what we're looking for. And often when we're doing that, somebody else is doing the first interview because I'm not usually the hiring manager. But when I come in and part of the interview process, I'm looking for, is this person going to feel at home working here? Because a lot of people show up and they've demonstrated technically they can do the work. That's fine. The question is, are they going to be enthusiastic about coming into this particular type of work environment every day? Because that's what it really takes. And so if you can have a conversation with a person about, well, what are you really looking for in your career? That's what I want to know, because I don't want to hire somebody and have them be upset because they're not getting out of it what they wanted. And so I try to be very transparent about, this is what you're going to get when you come here. And so to answer that person's question, I think whether it's a small company or a large company, their success is going to be more dependent upon what are they really looking for.
Thank you. And a follow-up that I have to that, I know a lot of the larger, Allstate, Humana, et cetera, they do like internship classes, or classes of interns. Would you say that the small company, either where you work now or other small companies that are part of the section, they typically have like summer internships for actuarial students?
Yeah, it's hard to say what's typical. I have talked to a number of smaller companies that have internships, and so you're right. It can be a completely different experience if you're in an internship program at a large company or a small company, because at a small company, you might be one of a couple of people who are interns there. And at a large company, they might bring in, 20 or 50 people. And so they have, what you said, a class, and they have, they might have lunch and learns every Wednesday afternoon where you're like, oh, we come and we eat lunch and somebody from the company comes and speaks about different things that are going on. So those two experiences are going to be completely different. One of the nice things about our position is EMC National Life is an affiliate of EMC, which is a property casualty company. So they're a much larger company, around 2,000 employees. And so they actually do have an intern class where they do that. And so if we have an intern during the summer, they can take part in the EMC internship class. So we can be both a small company experience to them and a larger company experience to that intern. But we don't have an intern come in every summer like some departments at EMCC have.
Yeah.
Slotted. We're going to have an intern every summer. And for us, we really try to make sure that if we're going to have an intern, we have projects or a project that that person can work on that allow them to experience what it's like to be an actuary. And it's also something that we need to have done. And sometimes it's hard to, I don't want to give somebody a poor experience for that. And so it needs to be a project that they can kind of get done in 3 months and feel like they've had a good experience to understand what the actuarial field is like.
So it sounds like someone who's looking for a more intentional experience or like a very specific experience might be better off looking for an internship at a smaller insurance company rather than a larger one. And it sounds like with y'all, they have the best of both worlds, that they're still able to build that community and participate in those lunch and learns and learn more as well. Okay. We have lots of attendees, but not lots of questions, friends. So please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A box. I'll ask one that a lot of people like to ask. I'm surprised it hasn't been asked yet, but did you fail any exams when you were getting your ASA?
Yes. I think there were 2 exams that I didn't fail on my first try. So other than that, yes, I failed every exam that I took at least once along the way.
And I'm sure for folks, you're now you have 3 different titles, and I know you said CFO and Chief Actuary, and I forgot the third one was, so.
Appointed actuary.
Appointed actuary, yes. So folks, you can still fail exams and make it up to the top. So that's really important.
It is, yeah, in the exam process, you run into people who are very good at taking tests, and you see that, oh yeah, they pass almost all of them on the first try. And if you're not that kind of person, that can be very infuriating to watch them just go bing, bing, bing right through. But most of the people that I know who have done this, it's a game of persistence rather than a game of being perfect the first time through. So it really rewards people who are willing to put in the time to study, fail, and come back and take the exam again and persist in order to be successful. Which is part of why it's interesting to be in this field, because we have this exam process that when I talk to people, I know, okay, you were able to persist through this exam process. So I know a certain amount about you and your ability to deal with setbacks. Or if you went through and passed all the exams on the first try, I know you're kind of a brilliant person.
Exactly. And on that topic, and thank you for more questions coming in, I just dropped 2 links in the chat if y'all are not already familiar. So we have a free affiliate membership program that puts on lunch and learns and other programs like this. And then we also have an upcoming in-person candidate connected to our health meeting in Seattle. So if either of those are of interest to you, please feel free to click on those links. And now we have more questions. So Mark, how did you balance your work and preparing for the exams?
Poorly. It was, yeah, and I think this is one of the things that I was, they, on message boards where they talked about the actuarial career path, they said pass early, pass often, because a lot of people now come out of college and they've already taken at least a couple exams and passed them. And so early on in your career, you can your job can be very modular, where you can say, okay, I can plan my work because I've been given these assignments, and say, okay, well, they're giving me study time and I can use this time on evenings and weekends, and I can make all that work. Since I started taking exams 9 years after I started working there, my job had become much more fluid. And so my work schedule required that I was much more diligent about carving off study time in order to be able to get it all in. And at least early on, I was not good at that. Like that was a skill I had to work on over time, because I would say, oh, well, I've carved off these 2 hours in the morning. I'm going to study. And somebody would say, hey, we need to have a meeting about this. I'd say, okay, well, the exam isn't for 2.5 months. I'll just give you that hour. And so I had to get better at saying no. And I would say that's a balancing act, because if you report to somebody and they say, we really want you to get this work done, and sometimes saying no to that person is very hard, but you have to have that conversation of saying, hey, we've agreed that me passing this exam is important and getting this work done is important. Let's talk about what the priority is, because obviously if you're 2 weeks before the exam, the priority might be different than if you're 2 months before the exam. But it's really easy to show up for an exam. Everybody can show up on an exam day and sit there and take an exam for 3 hours. People who are successful about passing that exam are the people who are good at saying, the exam is 3 months away and I am still going to sit down for 2 hours today and read and study.
Thank you. And following up on that, do you have any advice on balancing working at a small company and studying for exams?
I'm not sure if I have any small company specific experience or advice on that. It is, I suppose, at a small company, if you're wearing different hats, you might be pulled in more different directions by people outside the actuarial team. That is a good point to make, that when you're in a small company, you're more likely to be talking to somebody who's not an actuary. Everybody on my team is working with somebody who's not an actuary on a regular basis, if not daily. Whereas when I was working on a large actuarial team, the company had almost 100 actuaries. I could easily talk to many people in a day, and all of them were actuaries. So all of those people had an understanding of, oh, the exam is coming up next month. I really can't invade your time the same way I can next month when you're not studying. So you have to guard your time in both cases. In the case of working at a small company, I would say you have to be a little more diligent about making sure people understand, because you're probably working with a lot of people who aren't actuaries and they don't understand, hey, I need to study for 300 or 400 hours in order to pass this exam. And they wouldn't understand when the exam is, and why you're uptight about something that's going on next week. So it does require you to go in and be a better communicator about what's going on, so that people will both understand and give you the latitude to be able to study. And you have to be accountable for your work as well. But being able to communicate with people about what's going on is probably the big skill you have to master there.
Thank you. So our next question is, and I know you don't have experience in this yourself, but would you say writing an exam as a student who's working is harder to pass or harder to prepare for?
It would probably depend on what you're doing if you're not working, because certainly if you're going to school, that can easily take up a lot of time too. So depending upon what else, the problem is, what else is occupying your time? And work can be one of the things that occupies your time and takes you away from studying. If you have a family that's demanding on your time, that can also be something that takes you away from studying. If you're going to school, that can be something that takes you away from studying. So I would say it's hard no matter what, if there's something else that you're supposed to be doing in your life.
Thank you. And folks, if we have any last minute questions that you want to get in, go ahead and put those in now. Mark, what advice would you give someone who's a career changer coming into the actuarial field, especially when their previous career wasn't really aligned with actuarial science?
Well, first I would say this to anyone, you need to be authentic to who you are and what you want. So, like, understand why you want to be an actuary. Because you're going to get that question. You were X. Now you want to be an actuary. Why do you want to do that? Because when I was in college, one of my professors said, you only need a degree to get your first job, because you'll get your second job because of your first job, and you'll get your third job because of your second job. That's how a career works. So if you were doing something else and you're trying to become an actuary, you're really trying to jump a gap there where you have to explain to somebody and get them to believe that, oh, you can be an actuary, sure, even though you might be 10 or 20 years into a career, and all of a sudden you say, oh yeah, I was a computer programmer or an accountant, and now I've taken a couple exams and I want to be an actuary. So convincing that first person is probably the biggest jump you have to make. And to the extent that you can say, I have an understanding of what being an actuary is, and here are the things that I've done before that demonstrate that I can be good at the things that actuaries do. And there are a lot of things that if you've done something else first, you'll be a better actuary than somebody who hasn't done those things before, because you'll have an understanding of what goes on outside an actuarial team. So I would say, in order to sell yourself, you really want to bring those to the forefront and say, I have an experience set that's different than the other actuaries you're going to be hiring, and that's going to be valuable for you. And that's why you should hire me to do this. And once you get that, and you might have to accept the fact that you're going to get a job that you don't like the first time, so that you can have a job as an actuary, and then you can say, okay, I'll do this for a while, and then I'll get my second actuarial job and my third actuarial job, because a lot of actuaries bounce around once they start taking exams.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. We've gone a couple minutes over, so just being mindful of folks' time. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with before we log off for the day?
I would say the one thing about the actuarial field is that it's not a large group of people. I think in the United States, I don't know why, but like 17,000 actuaries is maybe what I read there are. So it's good to understand that your career can be long, and people will remember you for a long time. So people that I worked with when I was very young and first starting out are still around. And so we'll meet at conferences, and I realized, oh, this is a space where your reputation can follow you around for a long time. So I would say, be authentic and be the person you want to be, but also be mindful of the fact that, you're gonna, in the arc of your career, you're gonna run into the same people a bunch potentially. And so don't burn bridges as you go through your career, especially early on.
Yeah, that is solid advice for anyone in any career in this day and age. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for attending. Keep an eye out for our next session. It's going to be with the entrepreneurial and innovation section. That is next month on July 21st. I just remember that off the top of my head. I don't know how, but yeah. Awesome. Thanks everyone so much, and have a good rest of your day.